This is Gretchen Menn for Acoustic Guitar, and today we're going to be talking about major scale formation. So a problem for a lot of guitar players is that they've memorized a lot of finger patterns without fully understanding exactly what the patterns are. They might know it's a major scale, but they don't have the ability to transpose it or to find it in different positions along the neck. So the solution to this problem is just to familiarize yourself with some fundamentals of how scales are formed, and then apply that to the neck. So this lesson is going to build upon the very first lesson in this series, which is the elements of pitch. So if you're not already familiar with that lesson, I really recommend you go back and give it a good look. I don't recommend skipping over any of these lessons because the whole purpose of them is to build a very solid foundation. And I always find that when I go back and review the fundamentals, I have newfound insight or deeper understanding or different ideas about how it might apply. So take a moment, go over that, and then let's dive in. So as always, we're going to start with a theory, develop an understanding, and then we're going to apply that to the guitar. So in Western music, the smallest functional distance that we have between two notes is called a half step, and that's the difference, or the distance between two frets. On a piano, it's the difference between two adjacent keys, either black or white. A whole step would be skipping a fret, and it would be the combination of, say, two half steps. Okay, so we're going to start with the major scale, which is a very practical starting place because the scale is ubiquitous. You will find it absolutely everywhere. And the other thing is that the principles you'll be learning with the major scale means that you will be able to use that as a starting place for understanding other modes by just making slight alterations to that, which you'll already know. So with a major scale, let's go ahead and spell one to really put that into practice. Let's start with C major. So that means you're going to start on the note of C. Now, we have between scale degrees 1 and 2 a whole step. So that takes you a whole step, half step up from C is C sharp. That takes you to the second scale degree, which is D. Now we need another whole step, so that's D, whole step, gets you to E, and so forth. So that means the complete scale is spelled C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. There are no accidentals, meaning no sharps and no flats, because the half steps that occur between natural notes, which is between E and F and B and C, happen to fall in the same places that the half steps of a major scale fall. So meaning between scale degrees 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I just quickly jot out new scales, and how I did when I was learning them is I first write out the scale degrees, so numbers 1 through 8. And then I input where half steps are with just a little V connecting like the 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. And then underneath it, I write out the names of the notes. So if it's a C major scale, I write C to C. And if it's G major, I write G to G. And then I work my way up from the tonic and input accidentals as needed so that it fits the pattern of half and whole steps. So now we're going to spell out an E major scale. This is a very guitar-friendly scale because we're going to be using it. It'll work on 2 of our 6 strings, assuming that you're in standard tuning. So let's spell out an E major scale, and let's do it first in our minds, and then we'll apply it to the guitar. So we're going to go E, so up a whole step from E. Remember, the half step that occurs between E and F means that you need to make the F and F sharp to have a whole step. So work that out. And then you'll find that the notes of an E major scale are E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and E. So again, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half in terms of steps. So now let's actually apply this to the guitar. And what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you do the whole scale on one string. It's not because that's at all practical musically to do if you're playing a song in context, but it's to get us out of this mindset of intimidation around our necks that somehow this is this, maybe we know little sections of the neck, but actually looking at it doesn't provide us the same visual clarity that, say, a piano keyboard does. But all it takes a little bit more energy and things will start falling into place. So start with E, the open note, a whole step to F sharp, another whole step to G sharp. Now we're on the 3rd scale degree, so that means we're going to go to a half step to A, and then a whole step to B, then another whole step to C sharp, and another whole step to D sharp, and now you're going to be on your octave, E, which is the half step between 7 and 8. So here's your E major scale using one finger all up the E string. So we have E, our first scale degree, whole step to F sharp, whole step to G sharp. Now we're between 3 and 4, so that's our half step to A, whole step to B, now a whole step to C sharp, whole step to D sharp, and now our half step between our 7th and 8th scale degree to E. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing across all of the other open strings. But what I really want you to focus on is not trying to remember the fret numbers associated with your major scale, but really try to first find your notes, either on a piece of paper or in your head, and then find those notes on the strings again so that you really can see how it's all laid out. So now we're going to go with A major. There's our A. So applying our half and whole steps, we get A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. Okay, so now D major. Again, first think it through, then apply it to the guitar. So we've got D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. So now for G major, that's going to be G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. Okay, so now for B major, we have B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and B. So you can repeat this on the high E string as well. Obviously it's going to be the same notes as on the low, just 2 octaves up. But as you do this, try not only to be mindful of what notes you're playing, meaning G sharp, B, whatever, but also what note you're playing in relation to the scale. So being aware that in the key of, say, E major, that your F sharp is your 2nd scale degree, G sharp is the 3rd scale degree. And try in your mind to go back and forth, because it's very easy to just start looking at visual shapes. You want to be able to derive these notes from any number of different ways and really understand what their functions are within the scale. Okay, so thus far we've only been doing scales that use sharps. So those are called the sharp keys. Let's do one that uses a flat. So we're going to do an F major scale. So let's first spell it out. So that's F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, and F. And we'll do it on the E string. So this is example 7, F major scale. So using this same method, you can actually learn every major scale. What I just recommend is sitting down and first writing out, I like to write out numbers 1 through 8, and then I write out tonic to tonic alphabetically, and then I add the accidentals based on where I know the half and whole steps need to be. After doing that, then apply it to the guitar. So even though it's a simple concept, it's still important to go slowly, and there are 3 things you need to keep at the forefront of your mind. First of all, that half steps occur between natural notes B and C and E and F. Everything else will be separated with a note that has some sort of sharp or flat. The other thing to remember is that the half steps in a major scale occur between scale degrees 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. And finally, remember that in any scale, in any major scale, you're going to have only one of each letter of the alphabet, meaning in, say, the key of G major, that half step that occurs between the 7th and 8th scale degree, it's not going to be a G flat and a G. It's going to be called an F sharp. Remember, that's the enharmonic equivalent, and a G. Okay, so in the next lesson, I'm going to go over actual guitar-friendly shapes. Like I said, the whole purpose of this was to get you out of the rote memorization of just patterns that you may have learned on the neck and really try to lay out the fretboard in a way that's maybe a little bit more analogous to a keyboard, like a piano keyboard, and so you can really see how these half and whole steps connect to make major scales. So even though next month I will be showing you the ones I use, here's your mission if you choose to accept it, and I highly recommend that you do, which is I recommend you find these patterns for yourself. And the reason is that it will be so much more meaningful. Having to use your knowledge to derive these shapes will mean that all of the stuff that you're learning comes from your understanding. So you'll be exercising and putting all of the different elements that you've been studying together to actually make these musical shapes. So I'll at least give you a guideline for how to go about doing that. So step 1, pick a scale, pick a key. Let's say it's C major. Step 2, write that scale down. Like I said, first I like to write down the numbers, letters of the alphabet, half and whole steps. I can show you how I can do that. Then transfer those to notation. So if you don't have staff paper handy, you can actually download it at acousticguitar.com. There's a free PDF. Then grab your guitar, have your notes out in front of you, and start finding them on your fretboard. So let's take, for example, C major, starting in this open position. And we're going to go through these notes as in example 8. So once you're sure of the notes, find comfortable fingerings. At first, just find them. Then find comfortable fingerings. After you've done that, go to the next note of the scale. So in this case, if you started with open E as your third scale degree of C major, then start with F and work your way up from there. Don't use any open strings once you've actually started moving up the neck, and using 2 or 3 notes per string. So finally, just continue to work up the neck, finding the notes in your scale in the different positions. And eventually, you will and should memorize all of these different shapes and everything and fingerings. But the whole point is that by learning them this way, by internalizing this way, it ensures that all of these shapes that you're memorizing come from a foundation of understanding, which ultimately makes the learning so much more meaningful. Okay, so example 8, this would be a guide of how you could start figuring these all out for yourself. So we're going to be in C major. Our low E is going to be the third scale degree, so we're going to be thinking about this starting from the third. So we have E, our third scale degree, moving to half step between 3 and 4, F, whole step to G, A, B, which is your 7th scale degree, half step to C, right? And then you have D, E, half step to F, G, A, B, and there's your half step to C, D, E, F, G. So now you're ending on your 5th. Those are the notes of C major in your open position. So play them ascending, play them descending, play melodic lines within them. Try to disorient yourself so you can get reoriented, and then you'll really, really learn where all of these notes are. So now we've done C major, starting in the open position. I'll give you one more example, example 9, of how to start moving this up the neck. So now we're going to start working up our way, now from the 4th scale degree of C major. So we've got F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, A. Again, notes of C major, starting now on the F in the 1st position. Working this way, continue to work your way up the neck. Try to find as many scales, as many finger patterns as you can. And then for the next lesson, we'll go back and review them together. So example 9.